Recording in progress.
Okay, amazing. Shalom uvracha to everybody. Thank you for joining. Those who are here with us on Zoom, those who are here with us on Facebook, those who will be listening to this recording at a later point in time, Be'ezras Hashem. Thank you for joining as we continue our shiur on sefer Yichud HaHisbodedus. I will share my screen so we can see the source inside together. And we continue with a topic that we've been now learning for a number of weeks, which was the topic of a certain kind of personal prayer, which is really centered around the idea of bittul, centered around the idea where a person nullifies themselves to the will of the divine, where instead of coming to Hashem with our own laundry list of expectations and the things that we think we want, and the things that we know we want, or the things that we think we need, instead a person shows up with the humility of bringing to Hashem a blank piece of paper, as it were, and saying, Hashem, you write down what I need, and you sign on it, instead of me bringing to you what I need and you signing on it. We spoke very much about acceptance. We spoke about the wisdom of understanding that some things are not meant to be done away with, but they're actually meant to be experienced deeply and journeyed through, and even embraced and danced with. That sometimes the challenges that we have that appear to us to be problems are somehow, in some deeper sense, some kind of solution. And that's the wisdom of Chassidus, that's the wisdom of Rebbe Nachman, the understanding of showing up to Hashem with the word Hineni. I'm here for it. I'm here for it all. Whatever it is that you ask me to do, whatever circumstances you put me in, whatever challenges I currently have, Hineni. I'm here to do the best that I can with the tools that I have, but ultimately, it's all you. Ribbana Shalom, it's all you. Ein oid milvadai. It's all from you, it's all for you, it's all you. And this is the kind of hisbodedus that we've been speaking about, which of course is quite different than the ordinary standard experience of going out to the forest, or going out to the field, or going into one's room, speaking to Hashem, which is, on a much more common basis, an opportunity for us to express to Hashem the things that we want. And this is a completely different kind of hisbodedus, where first and foremost, before expressing our feelings on the subject, step one is acceptance. Step one is acceptance. And there are moments when a person is able to reach this madrega. Of course, it's an extremely lofty madrega, and even within this madrega, there are levels and levels, like in everything. There are myriad levels. But this is what we've been talking about. This has been our topic for the last number of weeks. So here Rav Kluger sort of closes up this topic, and then he's going to take a brief sort of segue into a slightly different topic, which is related, as we're going to see, bringing it back into the level of the mashal, in terms of the relationship between a Rebbe and a Talmud, a Rebbe and his student. But over here, to close it out, Rav Kluger reminds us that Hineni pshita, of course it's obvious, she'i efshar lichias b'darga zu l'lo heref. It's really impossible for a person to live on this level all the time, right? Constantly. A person's always going to need to descend from this extremely lofty level of consciousness into the more human experience of needs and wants and frustrations and anger, and that's normal, that's okay, right? We don't expect that people should be 100% of the time in a consciousness of Hineni and acceptance. It's really difficult. There are things that people go through that are just really tough, that are overwhelming. And we're human beings. We're not supposed to be anything other than human beings. I gave a shiur last night at a gathering for Yud Tes Kislev, which is a very big celebratory day in Chabad Hasidus, the day that the Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaTanya, the first Rebbe of Lubavitch, was redeemed from incarceration in the Petersburg prison in Russia. And I spoke over there a lot about this exact inyan. We're not supposed to be angelic. We're supposed to be human beings. It is specifically when we are still begeder b'nei adam, when we're still included in the category of regular human beings who experience the full spectrum of the human experience and the human condition. It is specifically then that the purpose for which HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the whole world and all the spiritual worlds is able to be fulfilled, which is to create for Hashem what's called in the Svarim HaKadoshim a dira b'tachtonim, a dwelling place, daika, specifically in the lower realms of reality, in realms of constriction, in realms of lack, in realms of concealment, in realms of fragmentation and tzimtzum. Dafka. That's the whole point. Like we say on Yom Kippur davening, Rebbe Nachman brings this in Torah Zion in the 7th lesson in Likutei Moharan Tinyana. Va'avisa tehila migrushe afar mikrutze chaimer. Hashem, you desired the praise of gushe afar, clumps of earth, krutze chaimer, those who are etched out of physicality. That's what Hashem wanted. And so to constantly be in a consciousness of Hineni, that's a high madrega. But here we're saying even more than that. Not only is it so high in madrega that it's not really relevant, it might not even be the ideal madrega. Moshe Rabbeinu reaches the 49th level of Bina, but he can't be masig, he can't attain and access Shar Nun. Because then he would leave the Geder, he would leave the parameters for what it means to be human. And he would just be completely nullified. He has to be human. True, like we learned this morning in Likutei Moharan, Shechina medaberes b'soich groino shel Moshe. It's true that Moshe Rabbeinu was so nullified, the Shechina is talking out of his mouth. But it's groino shel Moshe. It's still Moshe's throat. Shar Nun means there's nothing. Hineni. There's just total bittul, and that's not necessarily even the ideal. Until one is ready to leave the world, at which point Moshe Rabbeinu was able to integrate the 50th gate, that in his life he was not able to do so. As that Rizal tells us, he was nifter, he died on, and his neshama left his guf on Har Nevo, on the mountaintop of Nevo. And that Rizal points out that the word Nevo is the letters Nun Bo, which means Nun is the gematria, the numerical value of Nun is 50, where Nun Bo. Whereupon leaving this world and actually exiting the parameters of his humanity, so then at that point and at that point only, then the 50th level is able to be integrated. But all the while that Moshe Rabbeinu is alive, it's not even ideal to be able to reach Shar Nun. We're supposed to be humans. And so we're supposed to experience times of what's called Naicha L'Moichin, aspects of the resting of consciousness down to inhabit the lower elements of our identity, which are very human and fraught with all kinds of feelings and again, the things that we want and the things that we don't want, and the frustrations, challenges, goals, ambitions, all of it. Kedikasa Rabbeinu HaKadosh, what Rebbe Nachman calls Niglas HaTorah, Kedikasa Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the revealed aspects of the Torah. In other words, because in Pnimius HaTorah, Torah is not Torah. It doesn't mean mamash the Torah, the 24 books of Tanakh. It means all of reality. All of reality is the letters of the Torah with which HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. It's the whole life is Torah. And so there's Pnimius HaTorah. There are higher levels, more concentrated elements of consciousness, where a person is able to rise to madregas of bittul, to lofty levels of willing self-sacrifice. The consciousness that we've called Hineni, of showing up like that without a sense of self, without my own list of what I want Hashem to do for me, literally with a blank paper and saying, I'm here for all of it. It's not for me, it's for you. But then there's also called Niglas HaTorah, where I am a person with feelings and foibles and reactivity and a degree of coarseness and lowliness. I'm a human. That's called Niglas HaTorah in this context, right? That's called the revealed aspects of Torah. That's called the Olam Hazeh aspects of Torah. Hainu lashav ladarga she'ileh hayaroi v'chaser. Right, to return back to the initial consciousness of actually wanting the problems to go away, and not be sufficing by saying you want me to come and sit down in hisbodedus and enter into a place of acceptance. Right now I'm not holding my acceptance. Right now, I'm frustrated. Just frustration. That's the knee jerk. Right? Person gets a ticket. They parked in a place where they just didn't see. There was a new sign that was put up, and they park there every single day, and it's always okay. And today, they got a ticket. They look up, and they see a sign they never saw before. It was a sign that they put up today. The initial human reaction, especially if cash is tight, and there's frustration there. Because that's where we operate out of. That's even though in 3 minutes from now, when a person contemplates and thinks about what just happened, and ultimately there's nothing they can do about it, they're going to have to pay the ticket, right? And they sort of begin to accept the reality. So then theology kicks in and says, obviously this money was never mine. Better that Hashem should take money than physical health. Then everything else kicks in, which is wonderful and beautiful. But at the same time, the chiddush, right, the novelty of the fact that a believing Jew or a believing human being is able to shift into that consciousness is specifically the fact that initially he was frustrated. Because if right away he sees the ticket, he says, oh, thank you Hashem for the ticket, and doesn't just say it verbally, but actually feels that way, then there's not as deep a revelation of Hashem's presence in the Tachtonim without a person still maintaining some tinge of self, some tinge of experiencing life out of our own consciousness, and then being able to then shift, sort of kick it into high gear. But we're humans. We are frustrated beings. And this is why the person initially, like we learned last week, wanted to access the teachings of Pnimius HaTorah, is because he felt like he needed things. He was hungry, he was thirsty. He wasn't able to come up with rent at the end of the month. So he wanted skulas. He wanted a bracha from the tzaddik. He wanted everything to be fixed. That's called Tchilas Darkei. That was the initial impetus for this person to explore this spiritual path. And a person wants to go to Uman, for example, which we're going to be learning about, because a person wants to be poil Yeshuas, right? A person wants to go ahead. Imagine that. A person doesn't know anything about Breslov, about a derech and avodah, about a way of thinking about Hashem, about the eitzes of Rebbe Nachman. Nothing. All he knows, Rebbe Nachman was a great tzaddik. He needs a particular Yeshua. He needs a particular salvation in his life, and he travels to Uman. And while he's in Uman, he strikes up a conversation with a number of people, and they start telling him, Rabbi Nachman, it's true, he was a great tzaddik, and davening in this place is an extraordinary privilege. But also, it's not just like people today use tzaddikim like skulas, It's just a skula. No, he taught, he revealed a whole path of avodas Hashem. And then he sits him down and they start to learn a little bit, and then he takes home a couple of pamphlets, and he starts doing some reading and some learning, and all of a sudden this is way more than he bargained for, because now he's reading that actually the way that the tzaddik helps sometimes is not by actually helping, like we learned. It's by teaching us the secret of acceptance. That then ends up helping a lot, like we also learned last week, but it's not the point, right? The point, a person shifts into a whole different perspective. But in the outset of the journey, it was because the person was very much rooted in their own needs, in their own sense of self, in their own sense of a lack. And that's what kicked off the whole process. And sometimes we sort of need a little bit of a break, let's say, from that energy of all the time acceptance. Sometimes a person needs to crash. That's not only, again, it's not just like a b'diavad, like what can you do? We're humans. That's the whole point, is that we're humans who can conceivably crash, who even after putting on a brave face and being the strong one, again, whatever circumstances going on in terms of the family, whether it's relationship stuff, chas v'shalom, a death in the family, some other kind of deep frustration, the loss of a job, different things like that. And a person could be, very, very outwardly okay. And then a couple of weeks can pass, a couple of months can pass. And then it emerges that they actually never dealt with their stuff. It can happen. where they actually never processed the trauma, and now it's coming up in like crazy ways. And they were able to be strong for the people they needed to be strong for, but now it's time to heal. So this is what's called naicha lemoichin. This is called descending into this lower level of awareness where there's work to do. And it's good work. It's not a bad thing. It's not at all a bad, it's good. It's a good thing. It's an ideal thing even. That's the work. That's dir b'tachtonim. Otherwise, so we paint a clown face on our face the whole day, walk around with a huge smile. It's not real. It's not real. Hashem wants Rahman Ali Babai. Hashem wants authenticity. He doesn't want, some theater, for the sake of faith. So this is part of the journey. Like Rebbe Nachman writes, sometimes the light that's being revealed by the tzaddik is too bright. It's too big. Sometimes the gadol, which is the great spiritual guide, needs to shrink the light in order so that the katan, the one who's receiving it, can receive it in the proper way. The light is a little bit concealed, congealed. It becomes a little bit more opaque and covered over. In order so that the katan should be able to receive it. And we need to be okay with this. Again, I didn't want anybody to come away from last week's class and start to think, okay, I have to be all the time. No. Last week's class says this consciousness is accessible. First of all, I think first and foremost, it exists, right? It's a thing. That's the first thing. Second of all, it's a thing that we can access. But what we're learning today is that we need not feel dejected if we don't feel this all the time, if we don't feel this way right now, if we've only ever felt this way a long time ago. The point we're making here is that all that is so normal and is so ideal from the standpoint of dir b'tachtonim that it's to be expected. Biram, all Rav Kluger means to say is that al yidei hisbodedus mipam lepam b'darga gavoya shel b'chinas ben hamasecha. If we do indeed from time to time have an experience in hisbodedus of what's called ben hamasecha, if you remember, not simply that we are Hashem's servants who have their own life and prior had their own projects and only now are in a state of servitude but looking forward to get out, but we are ben amasecha. We were born into this. We don't know anything else. Our whole existence, right, in the nimshal is dependent upon God's will. If we have this experience of personal prayer, at least mipam lepam, sometimes, it doesn't say you can do this every day, sometimes, meir umeroimim eskol hemshech hachayim af b'hiyoser b'darga hayoser nechusa shel hashpas aranoisa natoich kli hamakabel. Then those times that we are able to experience this level of consciousness will shine forth and elevate all other aspects of one's life, even when a person is on the lower level of feeling their feelings, because they might feel those feelings very strongly, but those feelings will not bring them to despair. They might feel shivron lev. They might feel brokenhearted. But because they've tasted the taste of the of the light of bittul of Hineni, and they've come to the realization spoken out in hisbodedus that be'emes, in the deepest layer of their identity, at the core of their truth, because they're willing to die if somebody put a gun to their head, chas v'shalom, and told them you have to choose between Judaism and life, they're willing to die. So it's clear to them that at the end of the day, they're not here for their own ambition. They're here for Hashem. And if it's a thing that's unfolding in one's life that's beyond one's realm of choice, and they cannot control it, this is the will of God that's unfolding literally in real time in their life, then their frustration that they might feel, which is totally okay to feel, is not an absolute frustration. It is always undergirded with this faint realization that at the end of the day, it's good. It's good. Even though, again, right now, you're frustrated, you're angry, you're upset. How could they? How could she? How could he? And we can't really grapple or grasp, really. And we're finding it difficult to even grapple with the circumstances that a person finds themselves in. They don't know what to do. And a person's in a state of dejection and frustration and maybe even anger. Anger at oneself, anger at others, maybe even anger at Hashem, kiviyachol, on some level, which is a real thing. But because they have tasted the light of what it means to come before Hashem in a moment of higher consciousness to say Hineni, because they're aware of this path of acceptance and bittul, then even their experience of non-acceptance and non-bittul is different than it would have been had they not ever tasted the light of Hineni. This is a little bit deep, but I'll try to explain without going into long things as best as I can. Let's just read it inside and I'll explain a little bit outside afterwards. This is something similar to the light of Shema Yisrael, which is the first pasuk in that dual or die pasuk, the two psukim that sit at the core of our whole faith, which is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and then the whispered Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusai. So the Svarim HaKadoshim say Shema Yisrael is called Yichud HaHisbodedus. Just had the privilege of teaching this to 15-year-olds this morning in the local school. It's just incredible, this next generation. They're desperate for depth. They're desperate for the deeper teachings of Torah. You should see their eyes light up. You should see the smile on their face. It's unbelievable. I'm so blessed to be able to do this work. It's unbelievable. So we were literally just talking about this earlier today. Shema Yisrael, that first pasuk is called Yichud HaHisbodedus, which means it's the upper unity, which in plain English is God's perspective on reality, kiviyachol, as it were. Where Ein Od Milvado doesn't simply mean there is no God other than God. There is no God other than Hashem. There's just one God. Ein Od Milvado means there is nothing other than Elokus, period. From that perspective on reality, all there is godliness. Even though you and I experience a sense of self, and we live in a realm of distinction, and we live in a realm of limitation, etc., and so on, and so forth, from Hashem's perspective, Ein Od Milvado. There's nothing else but Hashem Himself. That's called Yichud HaHisbodedus. There's a lot, obviously, much more to say about that and to explain a little bit of what we can grasp of that. But that's what the pasuk of Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad is supposed to communicate. That when we say Shema Yisrael twice, 3 times, 4 times a day, a person in their mind should be contemplating, to whatever degree a person's brain can grasp this, that although we experience reality as real, and from our perspective it absolutely is real, absolutely, and it matters, and it's significant, etc., 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 there is a deeper truth, which is that all there is the homogeneous, unifying, infinite energy of the divine. That's called Shema Yisrael. That's called Negia be'emes Yichud HaHisbodedus u'bittul b'metzias. That's the revelation of the upper unity, which means that everything is totally nullified and does not exist. Bittul b'metzias. There's no reality other than Hashem. In the course and the curriculum that I'm Be'ezras Hashem putting together and already teaching, B'chaz Hashem, over 100 students a week, we call this the OTR, right? I don't like the word God anymore because it comes along with so many limited connotations that are so unhelpful. And so in the course, we call Hashem the OTR. OTR is the only true reality. In Yichud HaIlah, all there is the OTR. That's all there is. The only true reality. So you could understand why this would be dangerous for a person to contemplate the whole day long. I mean, essentially, so much of the sefer Nefesh HaChaim, which was written by the primary disciple of the Vilna Gaon, the antagonist, so to speak, of the Baal Shem Tov and the Baal Tanya and the Tzaddikim, was devoted to cautioning against meditating too deeply or really too frequently on this perspective, because it can cause us to lose grip on reality from the standpoint of starting to believe that any distinction is merely ephemeral, is merely just on the surface. It's just illusory. It's not really real, because if everything is Elokos, so then what's the difference between eating a kosher hamburger and eating an actual hamburger? Like, what's the difference? It's all godliness anyway. Nothing matters. And what's the difference between thinking Torah thoughts in a base medrash or chas v'shalom thinking thoughts of Torah in a filthy, dirty place? What's the difference? What's the difference between the Kodesh HaKodashim and Yankee Stadium? Like what's? So, and obviously the whole Torah relies on us really respecting hierarchy and distinction and parameters, definition. And so then Nefesh HaChaim says, whoa, hold on. We're only allowed to go into this consciousness very specific times. When we say Kriya Shema, when we daven Shmona Esrei, and when a person, or if a person, chas v'shalom, should find themselves in a time of sakana, in a time of danger, then a person is supposed to shift into this consciousness, and that's a great segula for times of danger. And that means just punctuated throughout the day, a person's supposed to enter this mindset, and then right away revert back to what's called Yichud HaTata, which is our experience of reality, in which case, in which all of us absolutely are real, have our own experience of reality, have our own identity, our own name, our own choice, where distinction is real, day is day, night is night, and so on and so forth. In Tanya, the Baal Tanya, Schus Yagan Aleinu, opens the door a little bit wider by letting us know that really we have now permission, according to the Tanya, to enter into that meditation anytime we need a little bit of a boost as to just how close Hashem is, as to just how okay everything already is. Because from that perspective, there's no other desire, there's no other will. All there is literally is just godliness, is just okayness, right? Is alignment with the will of the divine. So sometimes if a person needs to feel that in order to catalyze them to take the necessary steps from our perspective to get closer to Kedusha, to get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our reality, sometimes it can help for a person to meditate on the oneness of God and on how close Hashem is. And this awakens, says the Baal Tanya, ahava, love, when a person feels, oh my goodness, like, ein od milvado kipshuta. There's nothing else but God alone. But classically speaking, it's punctuated, it's not all the time. And that's what Rav Kluger is making reference to here. When we say Kriya Shema, it's only 2 times, 3 times a day. A person touches, if only for moments at a time, but a person touches that level of consciousness, that reality. Shemeir as kol b'chinas hachaim shebedargas baruch shem kavay malchus eloila. That's enough. Just like, again, he's using this as a parable. It's an important thing to know also. But he's using it as a parable for the kind of hisbodedus called Hineni, which having that experience even once in a long while is going to, like the Yichud HaIlah, cause for everything else to be illuminated, because that's on a strata of our consciousness, even if that's not the level of perspective that we live out of. But all the while that we've rooted ourselves in that reality, it naturally is going to shed a different light on everything else, even though those things are not in its direct spotlight. They will still be touched and tinged and illuminated by its unique hue. Ha'aras yichud ha'tata b'nitzutz ar yichud HaIlah. And therefore our experience of reality, the Yichud HaTata, which we again take very seriously and live staunchly within, that will be illuminated by just a spark of the Ar Yichud HaIlah, of that light of the upper unity. And in the same way, that's what we're saying now, in the same way, even only having this kind of hisbodedus in extremely punctuated ways, like not all the time, once in a long while a person is able to get into this feeling like, yeah, right now I really do feel this. Like maybe even sometimes it could take things falling apart to such an extent where a person's just like, that's it. Like, I'm taking myself out of the picture. I can't control anything anyway. That's called rock bottom in one way or another, whether in one's personal life, personal challenges, whether in relationships, whether in the chaos of all different kinds of things that can go wrong in life, or that can be challenging and difficult and painful. A person says, yeah, right now I think I can have a Hineni hisbodedus. I mean, I don't have any other choice. We go out to the forest and we say, Rebbe Nachman, I accept it. I accept it. And I'm just letting you know, I'm here. Whatever you need from me, I'm here. It doesn't make sense to my brain, doesn't matter. I'm mevutal to your ratzon. I'm nullifying myself to what you want. And again, coming to you, Hashem, with an empty blank page. You write what you want from me. It's okay. I'm here to serve you. Ani avdecha ben amasecha. When a person has those experiences, even if extremely, or even, I don't know, extremely, but quite infrequently, like those punctuated moments of contact with the Yichud HaIlah in Shema Yisrael a number of times a day, and the rest of the day is illuminated by those moments of immersive clarity, those hisbodedus sessions will shed light on all of the other hisbodedus sessions that are really us coming to Hashem with our laundry list. But you understand there's a deeper element of the dynamic, because we know the true truth. We've tasted the true truth. And so although right now I'm not on the level, I know that is underlying deep under everything I'm feeling, is a level at which I know that it's okay. I know that this is the Ratzon Hashem. I know that there's no escaping it. I know that there's no understanding it. And I enter into a state of bittul. Okay, and that sort of brings to a close this topic as it relates to hisbodedus. But now he just wants to bring one more final parable to enable us to understand this a little bit more deeply. And he's going to use something from the corpus of Breslover Hasidus itself. And so Rav Kluger continues in Oisvav. He says, "No, that's known Mashigila Rabbeinu HaKadosh. It is known that Rabbi Nachman revealed, and he said, HaRosh HaShana Shali Me'al HaKol, or Oila Al HaKol. My Rosh HaShana, spending Rosh HaShana with Rabbi Nachman, he said, Oila Me'al HaKol is the greatest possible thing. It's more important than everything else." And the way that he said this in the specific words was Hainu Rosh Hashanah Shali Daika. He didn't say Rosh Hashanah with me, Rosh Hashanah next to me. He said my Rosh Hashanah. Oh, so what does that mean? What's the implication? Kalaimar, in other words, sheyesh darga shamakabel ra'i v'chaser ubala kabbalas arat tzadik al kelav. Using this relationship as a parable for our relationship with Hashem, there are times when the chassid comes and schleps his way all the way through the bumpy roads of Kiev and everywhere, or even, now you have to land in the bordering countries in Moldova and Poland and all these different, Romania. And through there, a person travels to Uman for the purpose of getting, like I mentioned earlier, what they want. They come with their vessels, and they want their vessels to be filled. This is what we said earlier. Sometimes the tzaddik will need to descend to be able to enter in, so to speak, to the ready vessels of the disciple. But that's different than what the Rebbe is speaking about over here. Because Achiesh, there's a whole other thing, which is not Rosh Hashanah Shalcha im HaTzadik. The Rebbe didn't say your Rosh Hashanah together with me is the greatest thing. He said Ha Rosh Hashanah Sheli. Hainu, meaning to say Sheyesh li inyan miyuchad v'soidas genuzim. It's my Rosh Hashanah. It's not what you want. It's what the Rebbe is trying to be poil. It's some kind of tikkun, some kind of rectification that's taking place on behalf of all of Am Yisrael that nobody can understand, but the Rebbe knows. You don't have to know. It's Rosh Hashanah Shali. There's secret special things happening. And you, he said to the Hasidim, and today many more men are coming than ever before, but there are even a small group of women, and it's steadily sort of growing, and that seems to be the direction that things will go for, whether the Hasidim, they like it or love it, but that's part of it. But that everybody who's coming there is to become a vessel for what the Rebbe is trying to unfold. A person doesn't go to Uman for them. A person goes to Uman for the Rebbe's tikkun. Not for them personally, but for Rosh Hashanah Shali. Kenoida, and as is known, Rabbeinu HaKadosh Higdil Hisbate. He used tremendous emphatic language. Shal Rosh Hashanah hu writes a shiur kol anshi shloimoi kulam ke'echad etzloi. He wanted every chassid to be there. Ish lo yeh nedar. Not one person should be lacking. And it says in Chaim Haran, there's no way of imagining to what extent he pushed this. And he repeated it again and again and again and again and again. But Amar, and he said, Shekol inyan hu Rosh Hashanah. This inyan of what he's trying to accomplish with Uman Rosh HaShana when he was alive and also after his passing was his main thing. His main thing is Uman Rosh HaShana. Gam, so much so that by Rosh Hashanah ha'achron on the very last Rosh Hashanah of his life, which was only a few weeks before he passed away, on the fourth night of Sukkot, Cholamoid Sukkot, l'chayav ha'kadoshim diber mimalas misha zoich aliyos etzlei Rosh Hashanah. He spoke evermore about the importance of people coming to be by him for Rosh Hashanah, with the clear implication, because everybody knew he was on his deathbed, that he meant even after he passes away from the world. And then he said, Ma oymar lechem, what can I tell you? I don't know how to explain it, but ein davar gadol mizeh, there is nothing greater than this. Biram, however, klal lo hisber ubir v'legilim umam yisad Rosh Hashanah shalai. He never explained to anybody what's the whole thing, what's the big deal of Rosh Hashanah by Dafka, this person who's his whole inyan is Rosh Hashanah. His Rosh Hashanah is greater than anything. He said in a different place, Rosh Hashanah, and he says, I received as a gift from Hashem. Sha'ani yodea ma ze Rosh Hashanah. I know what Rosh Hashanah is. He didn't explain. And referencing this, that he never really explained why he made such a big deal about his Hasidim coming to spend Rosh Hashanah by him, which, by the way, was a very common minhag, meaning it was a widespread custom for the Hasidim of many Hasidic courts, still today, to go travel to the Rebbe. Rabbi Nachman didn't make this up, but nobody pushed it like this. And nobody said that even after they pass away, they want that there should be a pilgrimage to the place where the Rebbe is buried. That was something totally unique. And in referencing this, that he never revealed the reason, He said, "She'im ein havana b'Rosh Hashanah shalei." If nobody understands the secret of his Rosh Hashanah, there's a yelav oid kasha. Good, it will be another question on me. I mean, there's so many other things that people found difficult to understand about Rebbe Nachman. He said, "Okay, that's fine. They're in the dark about so many other things. Rosh Hashanah will just be another kasha." But he never revealed the secrets. This is a totally different Rebbe Talmud relationship. It is when the student is arriving, so to speak, into the embrace of the noisein, of the giver, to come to Uman not with my own ideas of why I'm there and what I want to get. No, Rebbe, I'm here for you. You said to come and I came. I consider myself one of yours. I've gained from your teachings. I have gratitude toward you. I believe in you. I believe that you had a koyach. I believe in what you said. Nitzachti va'anatseach. I succeeded and I will be and I will succeed. Oh, I came. I don't know why. I don't know why I paid thousands and thousands of dollars and had to schlep for days, sometimes traveling on planes and trains and vans and bumpy roads and hours of waiting at the border, freezing cold, mishigasen. I don't know. I can't explain it. But this is the level of our relationship right now. I didn't come for my Rosh Hashanah with you. I came because you said HaRosh Hashanah shali oila ala kol. I came for your Rosh Hashanah. Ani abdecha ben hamasecha ulekabel kedargas hamashbia uliyas klili inyanim she'ini yadea klalu klal mahem. I don't need to know. I just know that I'm a part of it. Rebbe, you'll do your thing. Liyas klili tzadik yisod olam lasaken olam b'malchus shakai. To be a part of the way in which the tzaddikim are rectifying the world in some deep, hidden, sweet way that is totally beyond me, but I don't need to know it. When the recipient, when the disciple goes through so much hardship and challenge and difficulty, and pays so much money, and suffers and struggles, without being able to know what he brought back, what he accepted, what's even the logic behind this whole turbulent, chaotic journey. It is through this that there's an expression of ratzon hanoisin ubedar of sheyesh atzmai kli shesam rather atzmai kli, that he or she has placed him or herself as a vessel la'orer ulekabel is ratzon hanoisin ubedar gosai. A willingness to receive not on my level and not what I want, but to be a part of what the tzaddik's inyan is. Shazei inyan acher legamri, which is a completely different thing. That's Rosh Hashanah shali daika. That word is very specific. It's his Rosh Hashanah, not ours. And of course, this is also part and parcel of what Rebbe Nachman said when he said, Kain ispalo lo yispalo, whether a person davens well with kavana, or lo yispalo, or is not able to daven with kavana. Kain achal lo achal, when a person eats amazing yantiv meals like they would have had at home, or did not eat. Aval b'Rosh Hashanah shia etzli, just be there. Elu abeis dargas, these two levels, are the aspect of two different kinds of Shabbos experiences that people had with Rabbi Nachman. As is written in Chaim Haran, Shayu Gimel Shabbosis B'Shana, Shayu Nesei Chasida, 3 Shabbosim out of the year, Rabbi Nachman would travel to the Chasidim, and there were other Shabbosim where the Chasidim would travel to spend time with Rebbe Nachman. On the level where they would travel to the tzaddik, that's a different thing. So the tzaddik is not coming down to the people are going up to the tzaddik to be a part of his inyan. This is the longer quote that he already brought earlier. V'zel shayne hakadosh, and this is Rebbe Nachman's holy words. He says, "L'fa'amim hagadol haylech v'nesei la katan v'lefa'amim lehepech." Sometimes it's the job of the gadol to travel toward the katan. Sometimes the opposite. Sometimes the tzaddik travels far away to visit students and to illuminate them. Sometimes the students come to the tzaddik. Obviously, it's only fitting for the katan, for the one who's on a smaller level, to go to the one who's on a greater level. Because who's trying to receive from whom? Right, the student is trying to receive from the master. However, sometimes the light of the gadol is so great, the light is too great, and those who would receive the light can't receive it at its source. Then the tzaddik, like we learned earlier, has to be mitzamtzim, has to constrict and conceal, so that the light could be experienced by those who are on a lower madrega. So that the light is concealed, so those who are on a lower madrega are able to receive it. But the main thing is lasis mimoich in the katnus, moich in the gadlus. The main thing of what the Rebbe is trying to do with all of his teachings and his advice and his wisdom and his melodies and his poems and his stories, this whole world, this Or Gadol of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, is to help us move from moich in the katnus to moich in the gadlus. Is to get out of a constricted way of looking at the world and to begin to see the world through eyes of expansivity. To illuminate the katan and to help to expand and evolve his or her concepts. She is gadol b'katnusa v'yanasa gadol, that they themselves should grow and become great. That's the sweetening that's ostensibly supposed to be happening here. So v'lefa'amim sometimes meir by ayidea aras panim v'nechamis. Sometimes the tzaddik needs to do that through smiling and through saying encouraging words and through comforting. Shemeir like panim v'panim seichakos, where the tzaddik greets the student with a great smile and a great welcome, ampini here in a shining face. But sometimes it needs to be in a different way. A log that they can't manage to figure out how to light. Sometimes they beat the log and they have to cut it into smaller pieces. Sometimes it could be possible that a teacher needs to show distance, needs to put down boundaries, and sometimes put somebody gently, hopefully, in their place to be able to help them realize what they need to work on, what they need to fix. To then enable that person to get out of the way enough so that they should be able to receive what the tzaddik wants to give. And here he said is not the place to go into the whole depth of it. But what you see here, the point being, is that there are these two levels, right? There's the level of the tzaddik coming down to the student, which is the aspect of regular hisbodedus kiviyachol between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where a person interacts with the Infinite One, with the Ein Sof on our own terms, given our own humanity, given our own challenges and struggles and frustrations, and the real lived experience of the human condition, which is totally okay. Like we said, not only just okay, it might even be ideal from the standpoint of dira betachtoinim. It's specifically there where we have an opportunity of bringing godliness into a place that was previously dark. But there's also the aspect of the student traveling to the Rebbe. And he used Uman Rosh HaShana as a perfect example where it's so mysterious. Nobody knows, that we don't even know why we go. There's a bechina of Rosh HaShana shali ala lakol. It's not for the student, it's for the Rebbe. That's a different thing. And that's the hisbodedus of Hineni. And like we said, even if a person is only able to express these feelings in hisbodedus mipam lepam, from once in a long while, like Yichud HaIlah, which we only tap into a couple of times a day, and yet it still manages to illuminate all of the Yichud HaTata, which is Baruch Shem. So too, these isolated experiences of a moment of bittul and true acceptance is able to transform all of the other experiences of hisbodedus that we have and illuminate them with that great light. And we finish here for today with Hayirida leMitzrayim hoysal yedei Yosef. Going down to Mitzrayim was through Yosef HaTzadik. We're learning about that in this week's parsha. Lekach, therefore, gam hagu'ula misham al yedei bechinas Mashiach ben Yosef. So the redemption from there was also through the aspect of Mashiach ben Yosef. Yosef's bones needed to be carried out. The sea split as a result of the Atzmas Yosef. Hayam ra avayanis ma ra hayam. Right, like the Medrash, the Gemara tell us. The sea. What did the sea see? Right. What the sea saw was Arayna Shal Yosef. Vayanas vayetze achutza. What it said about Yosef HaTzadik, who was able to get out of a makam nisayon by running away, and so the water saw that, and the water split. Yosef HaTzadik is the aspect of the Mashiach that redeems Klal Yisrael from Egypt, which is a reference because Mashiach ben Yosef HaTzadik, in relation to Yehuda, which is the world of Malchus based David, Yosef is the vessels, and David, Yehuda, is the light, is the Or. So that redemption was a redemption in accordance with the vessels of our own purposes. We were enslaved. It was about us. It was for us. It was about what we would get. We're going to Eretz Yisrael. It was about our own needs. Like we learned, after Bayis Rishon was destroyed and exile began, even though we came back after 70 years, but that wasn't a full geula. Really, Galus has started then. What was the Yerida about? It was about the descent of Malchus David v'Shlomo. It was the falling apart of the kingdom, of the Davidic kingdom. And therefore, our ultimate redemption from this exile will be Mashiach ben David. Will come as a result of the energy, not of Mashiach ben Yosef, where we're all worthy and we come with our own sense of identity and what we feel and what we want. It's going to come because of an energy of bittul, because of Mashiach ben David. Bechinas, like David HaMelech is the one who says, Ani avdecha ben amasecha b'dargas hanoisein. To say, Hashem, I don't even want geula for any of my own reasons. I want geula because you want geula. I want the redemption because you know what the whole purpose of this whole thing was. You know what the whole purpose is. You know what the whole purpose will be revealed to have been. I don't know what that is, but Hashem, if you want it, I want it. Yeah, it'll be good for me too. But that's not the level. Says Rav Kluger, this is the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh v'Hanoira. V'ar HaBaal Shem Tov HaKadosh hisnoitetus oiroi shel Mashiach. The flickering of the light of Mashiach, shining maybe in a specifically bright and revealed way on this day of Yud Tes Kislev. This is what it means. Lias naki ubatal Hashem Yisbarach ba'avoida ne'emana. That's what the Baal Shem Tov wanted to bring us to. That the ani that so often stands between us and Hashem should be transformed to ayin, where a person should experience bittul. A person should really experience Yiddishkeit at the deepest core, in the essence of their identity, is this aspect of Hineni. To nullify our own motivation before His will. Lias kalil laHashem, not just to be offered up as a carbon, to be an oila. Right? There's nothing left. Bebechinas Mashiach ben David. That's the light of Mashiach ben David, as is known. The Baal Shem Tov was a great grandson, was a direct descendant of David HaMelech. And that's the messianic energy of Hasidus. That's what Mashiach told the Baal Shem Tov, Emasai Ka'asimar, when the Baal Shem Tov asked, when are you coming to redeem us? And Mashiach says, L'kishiyafutsu mayanasecha hachutza. When your teachings, meaning when your consciousness, the consciousness of Hineni, the consciousness of Ani Avdecha Ben Amasecha, the consciousness of acceptance, the consciousness of embracing challenge, the consciousness of Dir B'Tachtoinim, when that spreads hachutza to the farthest reaches, then all of humanity will be illuminated already from within with the light of Mashiach ben David, which is the light of bittul, of hishtavas, equanimity, of focusing really on Hashem and seeing ourselves in the context of what it is that Hashem wants so desperately to reveal to this world through us. And that's how we understand our whole identity, that's why we exist. That's why we have a grono shel Moshe, right? A throat, so that Hashem should speak through it, that to be a mouthpiece. Atem eidainu Hashem. That ultimately, Ki Lashem amlucha Moshe b'garin. This is all for Him. It's all for Him. It was only ever all for Him. And this is the way that the Baal Shem Tov wanted all of us to live. And because the galus that we're currently in really, in a certain sense, began with the destruction of Malchus Beis David, it's going to have to be rectified with the energy of Mashiach ben David, which is this aspect of being able to tap into the energy of hisbodedus with the mentality and the consciousness of Hineni and Ani Avdecha Ben Amasecha. Okay, amazing. So, Baruch Hashem, we finally finished. It's quite a long parak, quite a long chapter, and Be'ezras Hashem, looking forward to continuing next week. Actually, we have to see about the timing. I'm not so sure because it's going to be Hanukkah, so we'll see. When we're able to continue, we will continue with the next chapter, which is all about not only being able to speak in hisbodedus, which is basically what we've been speaking about, but the ability to listen in hisbodedus, the ability to stay awake to insights that might flow forth as a result of our talking out what's going on in our lives in the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So really, really excited to jump back into it. It's very, very special. And looking forward to continuing this with all of you who are following along and joining us on this journey. Okay, Yasher Koach, thank you so much for joining. Wishing everybody the most amazing rest of your day. Yasher Koach, thank you very much. שכל כך אוהב אותי, האב שלי, מלך חי וקיים, על כל נשימה שאני